Welcome to White Label American Podcast. This is a podcast that brings you bold, in-depth interviews with interesting people that are mostly immigrants taking down artificial walls one story at a time. This is a podcast that empowers immigrants to share their stories and listen to those of others. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another episode of White Label American. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm your host, Raphael Harry, and I appreciate each and every one of you who's been listening and supporting us in every way possible. 5 stars, sharing episodes, bringing new listeners. Thank you. Afros and Audio Podcast Festival tickets are still going on. If you want to join in, you can buy tickets. Use the promo code RH2023AFAU. Remember, it's October 21st to the 22nd. Is the first Black Podcasting Festival. So please, they need all the support they can get. Some sponsors pulled out. So, hey, when it comes to Black things, we have to struggle to get money and all that. So you can also donate. So go on the Afros and Audio Podcast Festival website. Please support them any way possible. We need all the support we can get. All right. So with that being said, I am honored to have today's guest. How did I even come in contact with you? I think it was through Clubhouse. I may have run into you in one of the rooms, and I was like, there's just something different. And when I say something different, it's in a positive way. Where I was a few years ago, I probably wouldn't have brought today's guest on. And I'm glad for the journey. I'm glad for this podcast because, it's about bringing a diversity of thought, of showing growth. And it's also, the growth also includes mine. And you all know I'm not religious any longer. I was born into a very conservative religious family. But it doesn't mean I frown on people's right to religion or people's right to practice. But it's also important to bring people whose faith, who still believe in their faith and who believe in using their faith to show you the path to where you need to get to show you that the journey continues, but it's not a journey that is about oppression or oppressing others. And that's why I had to bring today's guest on, and I have the honor of introducing Reverend Jide Macaulay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, and welcome to New York again.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing today?
I'm actually doing very fine. My name is Jide Macaulay. Rebirth is a name that I gave myself, so it's not a name my parents gave me.
Okay.
And the reason for rebirth is that having been through life, as a young adult, and at some point, I came out as gay. So everything that I knew about my religious upbringing literally fell apart. So I grew up in a very Christian, conservative Christian family. My father is also a pastor. My late mother is very religious. But I think that, when I came out, for me, it was really a very tough experience. And through all of that, I started to look for answers to many questions that I have about my sexuality. Can God love me just the way that I am? Are there Christian spaces that I can be myself? So the name Rebirth, became one of my names as well. And because I was rebirth when I went on a journey of reconciling my faith and my sexuality, and I totally believe that God loved me just the way that I am. I am not an apology to God. There's nothing to change. So all this madness about conversion therapy, all this healing deliverance and casting out and binding the demonic spirit of homosexuality is absolute nonsense. So, and I'm just hoping that, your listeners will stay tuned and, have an understanding that God loved them just the way they are.
Oh, they will. They've had different voices, and interestingly, everybody from the LGBTQ community that's been on this podcast has been spiritual and has been active in faith. So, which has been, it's something that I've been. It's not something that I've gone out of my way to find, but it has been. I've been pleased to discover that, because it would have been a lot easier to just do away with faith and say, hey, I'm being oppressed by most faiths that I practice, so why should I be in that faith? But before we continue with that, let's go to the very beginning. I was looking for something that somebody sent me, so yeah, found it. But your names, you have beautiful names, and you actually, your first name is the name of one of my childhood friends who unfortunately passed away about 2 years ago. But I was going to ask for the meaning of your names. But before I get to the meaning of your names and if there's a story behind them, your last name is also the name is of one of the men considered to be the founding fathers of Nigeria. So do you bear any relations to that person?
Yeah, he is my great-great-grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I am a descendant of Herbert Macaulay. And, and there are just so many stories behind it. Of course, people might ask, how about Macaulay? Of course, Macaulay is the colonizers' names, and many, former colonies have many people with different names like Smith, Jones, Martins, Macaulay, Simpsons, and so on.
I'm a Harry, so.
Yeah, so, and I think that, the thing with names is that names are very, very important to many Africans. I was called Baba Jide. My grandfather on my paternal side, passed away in April of 1965, and that was the year that I was born. I was born in November, so I was the first male child that was born after the passing of my grandfather. Now, as a Yoruba man, or someone who's from the Yoruba clan, so to say, Baba Jide means father wakes up. And when a child is born after a grandparent passed away, it is believed that the child is being born to appease, to bring joy and, and happiness to the family, because they're still mourning the loss of a grandparent. Yeah. And the same as well for girls as well. If a girl child is born after a grandmother passed away, they would name her names like Iyabo, Yetunde, and so on and so forth. So it's really a blessing, because it means that, this new child has softened the pain of that family.
Yeah, I remember that. I lived in Ibadan for a few years. I finished my secondary school in Ibadan. So I got introduced to that part of the Yoruba culture over there. So, can you introduce us to your place of birth? And you've already introduced us to part of the culture.
Absolutely. So, I was born in London, and of Nigerian parents, of Nigerian heritage. My parents were students in England in the 1960s, and they gave birth to three of us in England. So, and I moved to Nigeria probably either late 1968 or early 1969 after my younger brother was born. So then I was raised in Nigeria proper.
Okay.
And I was raised in Nigeria. So we came to understand the culture, and always very grateful that I was raised, with a good knowledge of the Yoruba culture, the Nigerian culture, all the things that everyone should know, really, like respecting your elders. And of course, the one thing that I also love about Nigeria is also the food. And that goes with you everywhere. It's not just the jollof rice, it's also the amala, gbegiri, and, and pounded yam and so on and so forth. But I think that the other thing again is that, having been raised in Nigeria, it gave me a better understanding and grounding that is often expected, because sometimes people think that, children raised abroad, especially in America or in Europe, are often wayward because of certain laws. I think that for me, children can be raised anywhere in the world. They just need to be raised with love. That's what they need, because if you cannot find love at home, you will go seeking for it across town, and that's where you get into serious trouble.
That's right.
Now, of course, my early education were in Nigeria, so I went to nursery school, primary school, and secondary school in Nigeria. And I returned to England in my late teenage years when I also continued my education. And I, signed up for a law degree in England where I studied law. And I became a lawyer.
All right, let me cut you there before you go too far, before you spill too much tea. Staying with your childhood, what do you consider your favorite childhood memory to be at this moment?
Oh my goodness me, I've never thought about this question.
Yeah, that's why I'd like to.
My childhood memory has to be the rural living in Nigeria and the fact that we go fetch water at the river. That is one of my childhood memories.
In which village or?
In Lagos. It was Ojudu. Ojudu is now a huge city or town in Nigeria. But when it was very rural, we used to go with, our own bucket of water. Just go fetch water for the household.
Yeah.
We might make a number of trips in a day, but we often combine it with also taking laundry to the riverside.
Okay.
And of course, combined with that as well, another childhood memory is also my baptism. I was probably about age 13. I was baptized in a river, and the water was not blue, nor was it green. It was brown. But it gave me the opportunity to say that, look, if Jesus was baptized in River Jordan, I too was baptized in the river. So, but I do know that obviously, of course, being Anglican today, we sprinkle the water of baptism, from the font in the church. So, but there are still some communities that still have full immersion. Like they can use a swimming pool. They can use a special pool bath for the immersion. For baptism, but of course, I'm proper Niger, baptized in the river.
Yeah. What river? Do you remember the name of the river?
I don't. But it's certainly one of those rivers in Ojodu side. It would have been maybe at the edge of between Julius Berger and Oworonshoki Sherry side. Okay. There is a river that runs. I don't know. No, a lot of these rivers could have even dried up because of the vast development.
That's true. Yeah. But you're right. When I was in Ibadan around, between 96, around 99 was when I noticed the white garment, one of the white garment churches in my neighborhood. They used to take their members to, there was a small stream. I was in, it was part of Bodija area, but there was a particular name for that area. It starts on an A. It will come to me later on. Then I recall seeing one of their prophets taking the members of the church to the small stream and baptizing them there or washing them sometimes. And I was like, oh, this is how they do theirs. So, I was born Catholic, so I don't remember my baptism because I was a baby when that happened. So so that memory just popped in my head when you mentioned the river. And then I recall seeing some. I think I may have attended Baptist. Yeah, I remember in Benin City. That just popped in my head too. I had to live with a family friend for some years, for a few years, and the Baptists, they went to Ogo River, Ogo River or something like that. But Baptists, they usually went to a river too to baptize there. So memories I thought I'd forgotten.
Well, obviously, just also to say that, I was raised in the White Garment Church, the Celestial Church of Christ.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, my dad was a Celestian leader. So, so it was, I had a good experience growing up in that environment. But of course, later on, when it comes to the issue of my sexuality, there were so many challenges as well.
No, but you guys could dance, though.
Oh, absolutely. I think that
you guys could dance.
And honestly, it's Africans are dancers, natural dancers. When you come to
when
church,
it comes to churches, there's differences between other churches and white garment churches when it comes to dancing.
But I mean, the one thing that people have often said, or people try to demonize dancing in church.
Yes.
And we've forgotten that, David, King David danced.
Yeah.
And he danced to the point that even his own wife had something to say about his provocative dancing.
I remember that story.
And I think that, we should not demonize dancing, because the black body, the African body, is built in such a way that it accentuates the dance.
I mean, look at our traditional religions. It's part of our thing. There's a page I saw on Instagram the other day, Niger Delta Heritage, and I'm Niger Delta. And I don't even know, because I know as a kid, there was no, for boys, there was no, this is how we dance. But it was like when I attended traditional marriages, then I'll see my uncles moving their hips, and I'm like, whoa, this how we dance? When do we learn this? And then it's like, you're supposed to learn somehow, but you see your masquerades dancing. It doesn't matter which tribe, which part of the country you're in, you just see masquerades. All the masquerades, they move their hips. So there's something about the dancing. Doesn't matter if you're you're male or female, and I'm using just those two genders, but it comes with us. The celebration, the way we celebrate, we don't just stand still. It's a thing that we move with the rhythm.
The emphasis, African dance, the emphasis is always on the waist.
Yes.
If you can move your waist, that's why we've had songs like The Hips Don't Lie. We've had all these songs that even Beyonce has made, about, bootylicious and things like that. I mean, those emphases are based on the fact that, we dance with our hips. And that goes with men and women. And also, cultural attire also accentuates the movement. So imagine the man with the agbada, but again, we're talking about binary say. But when you move your agbada, depending on which way you're going, you will see how it moves with you. And then if you do a spin, that is even more amazing. So the dance culture is very, very great.
It is. So moving from your childhood memory, you've touched on some of your childhood growing up in Ojudu, in Lagos, and you are a child going through that phase in Lagos. Was there any period when you began to notice that you weren't, for lack of a better term, like other kids? There was something different about you?
It's actually a good term, Yes, I was not like other kids. I believe that I was different. I didn't think that I was special, but I was different. And I think my awareness of those differences was probably around about age 5, 6, 7 years old. And, it's just the comfort, to be with people of my own gender. And it is nothing cynical, but it's something that did not, manifest, in my environment. It was not something that I've seen examples of. So I didn't see an uncle with another man or an auntie with another woman or, in romantic gestures, because I was raised very much in a very conservative, heteronormative society. So fast forward to maybe about age 12 to 14, it became a little bit more apparent that I was different, and I was, physically, mentally, emotionally attracted to my own gender. And those differences were there, but again, there were no examples, not even in television, not in any kind of print material, not in animation, not in photographs. But again, how do you cope with that? Of course, being raised in a Christian family also meant that, I was very privy, to reading the Bible much more as a young person.
Yeah.
And of course, the examples of who I am, seems to centered around what I believe to be what people call an abomination. The Bible condemns it. I've read it in the Bible myself, that, homosexuality to some extent is condemned. But I think that, we have to look at these issues more closely to who are the narratives, who is doing the translation, who is providing the understanding. Is the environment safe for same gender loving individuals to express themselves? What kind of environment are we raised in? The truth remains that because Nigeria or most Africa countries are very heteronormative, we only see those examples, which is simply normalized. So if a man holds the hand of a woman in Africa, it's not seen as problematic. But when you hold the man of another man in such a way that, it makes other people, quote unquote, uncomfortable, then that becomes problematic. But if we have a normal day life where, people of the same gender hold hands and it's not an issue, people of the opposite sex hold hands and it's not an issue, then we have a society, that will provide safe spaces for everyone to grow and see examples of themselves. Unfortunately, the other thing again is that a lot of people want same gender loving individuals to deny themselves the opportunity of finding ourselves in scriptures, in religious texts. So relationship like David and Jonathan, Ruth and Naomi, people want to explain them in different ways so that it doesn't afford a same gender loving individual to recognize themselves in scriptures. So me growing up in Nigeria, I've always been aware somewhere between the age of 5 and 7 and then between the age of 12 and 14, simply because, at 14, certainly my hormones were certainly kicking in. As a young teenager, I was very much aware of my own self and my environment. I certainly know, who I am at that point, but, being able to articulate it in Nigeria is a different point. Yeah. But I always say this, that at age 14, I had a boyfriend in Nigeria, but I'm not sure if he knew he was my boyfriend.
How did that work?
That was supposed to be a joke, Rob. But honestly, let me put it. I hope that anyone listening will get my joke. But I mean, basically, yes, I was so close to a friend of mine. We're about the same age, and we spend a lot of time together. I mean, in Yoruba, we would say "ore korikosun," a friend that you cannot do without. And of course, there was nothing sexual about our relationship. It was just the emotional connection was there. If he's absent from school, I'll go look for him. If he's unwell, I'm always by his side.
Yes, I get those relationships. I had that with both boys and girls.
As a gay child, for me, it's like the close affinity to that person was really great. But on the other side as well, I had many girls who were my friends. But, my dad, for example, felt threatened by the fact that there were so many girls part of my friendship. And I mean, he actually had to put his foot down one time. He told all the girls never to come round. Because you see the way that he was thinking, right? Yeah. He was thinking that there must be something sexual
going on.
And I think a lot of African parents make a huge mistake, especially when you don't know the sexual orientation of your queer child or of your child generally. You assume. So I think my father assumed that, oh my God, there are so many girls around him. 6 of them are going to come home pregnant.
Yeah.
And it was certainly not the case. We're probably busy sharing tips about makeup and how to woo the boys.
Oh man, but yeah, I get it now. There was for that age, there was the friendship was there was someone who you were really, the closeness was it was definitely
I think young people are naturally inquisitive as well. I mean, we as a people, we got to allow young people to be inquisitive and ask questions.
That's one problem that I had. Every time I look back to that period of my life, between 10 to 17, 18, there was, it's why one of my late uncles, at least two of, actually three, the person who actually I even consider, the person I consider the most father figure in my life, my late aunt and my late uncle, they stood out for being the people who they never pushed back and said, go away. When you came with questions, even the hard questions, they always had some explanation, even if it wasn't right. But they were always like, okay, well, have you thought of it this way? Have you and even if, because they allowed you be a kid. And your opinions may have been upside down, but they allowed me be a kid. And those are the memories that carry me to this day. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is what they were doing then. But the rest were always like, you're stupid. Get out here.
Yeah.
You're this. Or they'll laugh at me in my face. And then years later, they'll come back like, oh, you had this question. You used to always have this interest. Why didn't you follow up on that? And I'm like, you don't remember your reaction to me when I wanted to write and I showed you what I'd written and you, this is stupid. Get out of here. And
I mean, the scenario you gave before we started talking on the show about the young person, very effeminate person that came to see someone. And I think that, again, the society, especially in Nigeria, has demonized difference. It's not just the effeminate men, it's also the masculine girls.
True.
So
100%.
but because we live in a very patriarchal society, it's very easy for toxic masculinity to take shape. And of course, the reaction that you experience around this effeminate person is because we live in a patriarchal society that dictates how women behave, and any man that behaves in a way of a woman is being subjugated, So a society that does not believe that men should take on the role of women is because of the power that men have in that society. So men rules. When your aunt said, he should walk like a man, we have to ask ourselves a question: how do men walk?
Exactly.
If you don't walk on two legs, in which other way do you walk? But there's something about effeminate people that, we can't control which direction our waist go. We just move. And, our waist, again, we're talking about dancing earlier on.
That's why I brought up the dancing.
So when people are dancing, they're
example.
absolutely effeminate, especially when they're throwing their backside all over the whole place.
Because that's why I brought up that example, because it all adds up to the curiosity and the confusion at the same time, because you've yelled at me, well, not me exactly, but you've yelled at someone else, and I'm witnessing it walk like a man. And you've painted one picture in my head that is how men are supposed to be. And then we go to because we are not living in I'm an Ijaw, and we're not living in an Ijaw majority area. And then we go to an Ijaw majority area to celebrate our person getting married. And then there's dancing, and then we are all the men are shaking hips, and I'm the only one. They're like, I don't dance. I'm a man. I'm not gonna dance.
I think
I'm confused now. But why are men moving their hips?
But if you look at the society today, the mental health of men has gone up because we've been told to man up. We've been told we're not man enough. We've been told that men don't cry. And, it has actually caused, there's a time bomb of mental health crisis, because allow men to be free, allow men to be themselves, allow men to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Allow them to fall and pick themselves up. But when we say men don't cry, man up, you're not man enough, we're oppressing men. That's oppressive for men.
Oppression right from childhood. You start telling boys, use the wrong type of language. You're creating dictators, mini tyrants. Telling, if we make you a prefect in class, this is how you're supposed to act. And you do it mostly to the boys. You don't do it to the girls. And the girls even try to mimic that behavior so that they can be up there with the boys. And you're still like, you're a girl. You're supposed to be a lady. Behave like, submit yourself to the boys' authority, which is another problematic trait that we try to instill in the women. And all these things are things that play in my head sometimes when I'm looking back. I'm like, oh man, there were times when I even countered some of it because I don't know why it was just happening, but I'm like, I don't know, but maybe because I was raised by, there were a lot of women in my house. And I knew some who were in toxic marriages because I knew a couple of aunts. I knew an aunt especially who, that monster she was married to, that man used to abuser, physical abuse. But I never knew that happened to my mom too, until I will stumble on my mom's old diary after she had moved to America, and that's when I realized my mom had faced
Domestic abuse.
domestic abuse. And as a 16-year-old, you're like, man, if I see that man, I'll kill him, I'll beat him, and all that's going through my head. But yeah, but how have you been talking when you're around boys, like, these girls need to girls need to behave themselves and all that. But so how am I going to be talking like that with my boys?
I think there are times where we look at our society and see how much damage that has been done to society. Even unfortunately for the girls,
Yes.
a lot of girls also believe that the men, the boys, are superior. And sometimes it's because of the way society. But you know what? Honestly, the debate or the jury's still out. But I think that is important that women and girls know that they're equal. They can also achieve as much, and I personally just do not believe in this whole thing around patriarchy and toxic masculinity that women cannot do without men. They can do a lot without men, without the pressure. But unfortunately, we as Africans, we are raised in this society that believe that women are second-class citizens. And unfortunately, these whole things also come from the religious text as well. It comes from how religious texts are interpreted, where, it says women submit yourself to your husband, women do not speak, in congregation of the elders, and so on and so forth. These are badly interpreted scriptures that has put a lot of oppression and subjugation of women and girls. The scripture also talks about women being properties of their fathers, and then secondly properties of their husbands. So in today's society, if a woman or a father with daughters want to move away from this, they are ostracized.
Yes.
So and the whole idea of the independent women is being rubbished by men who want to continue to have this power over women. Things have changed, and of course, there's so much more to talk about, and the question still remains: who is a woman and what is a woman?
That's a great question. But like I said before we began recording, I'm happy for various moments that happened in my life which I consider cracks. Because like you said about that question, who is a woman and what is a woman? The same person who I had referenced as being a father figure is a woman. Or well, for everybody will consider her a woman. And that's the strongest person I've ever met in my life when it comes to physical strength. She never, I think she never went past primary education. Her intelligence, I put her intelligence up there with most people because philosophically, she had things, the way she saw life was just beautiful. It was poetry. But physical strength, she was so strong, and I just, I would know, like if she knew that somebody touched me or touched her kids, man, I've seen her lift a man and slap that man. So it was something that I was like, yeah, I'll go tell her. Touch me, I'll go tell her. But what I always love bringing her up is that whether it was physical strength, whether it was bringing solutions to problems, she could match any man out there. It was just wealth, cash that she didn't have. That was the only place where, most people could beat her. Other than that, she could match anybody.
Some
people will be like, we have women, men, and so I'm like, no, I've seen somebody with my two eyes. She could. So when they are saying men are superior, I'm like, the only place you can say men are superior because you control the cash. That's it.
Well, unfortunately, men no longer control the cash.
Exactly.
I mean, I think that the idea that, people see that women are insignificant is because of the way that society has forced that narrative, on women. And when we start to talk about wisdom, generally, it's got nothing to do with how many degrees you've got.
Oh, yeah.
And, so again, I can bring my own personal example. My father is a highly learned person. My father has multiple PhD doctorates behind his name. He's had career, has diverse, has becoming Nigeria's first automobile engineer to one of the top theologians that I have known. But yet, he still lacked the basic understanding of inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion. So, and equality, diversity, and inclusion. But again, compared to my late mother, my mother was educated, but I would say she didn't have the accolade of an academic, but her wisdom, the way that she sees matters of difference is incredible, amazing. The way that she reaches out, to support people that are marginalized is astounding. You understand me? And, I've never seen my mom, never saw my mom condemn people on the margins. But unfortunately, I have witnessed my dad speak down on transgender people. I've seen my dad speak down on people living with HIV as an academic, as a religious leader, and that is heartbreaking for me to see. But I mean, again, we can talk about this in terms of men and women, and most educated and people who do not have the education. But I think what is important is the humanity of the people that we're surrounded with. I mean, again, people call me Mama Jide, or I ask people to call me Mama Jide. I think it all started when I was at a wedding in Nigeria, and I was invited to pray for this married couple. And of course, my whole outfit, my agbada, was flowing in the wind of Lagos. You understand me? So this is me walking towards the couple to pray for them. So when I finished praying, I came back and took my seat with my friends. And my friend looked at me and goes, Reverend Auntie Jide. It's like, okay. I was trying to pick myself up in this moment.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too long after that, that my congregation started to call me Reverend Mother.
Wow.
And there was something about the maternal spirit, or the motherly spirit, that I have embodied. And I look at my mother, my late mother, for that spirit that I got, that kind of loving, gentle, motherly care.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately for me, I'm not saying this is not for everybody. I did not get the fatherly spirit from my dad. And people might turn around and say, well, your father wasn't there, that's why you're gay. No, my father was the opposite of my mother. My father, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but he actually lacks the empathy, for understanding difference. So even when years later, or decades later, when he came to know about my sexuality, the way he responded to it was different from the way that my mom responded to it. And it's not that my mom was condoning anything. My mom had a better understanding. And then we're talking about people with academic abilities. My father with a PhD still does not understand homosexuality, but my mother got it.
You're right on the humanity. And one thing I also find interesting is that Yoruba culture, the traditional Yoruba culture, is actually LGBTQ progressive.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of African cultures are progressive when it comes to LGBT. It's not just the Yoruba, the Nupe tribe, the northern tribes of Nigeria, and several other African communities understood LGBT people, even understanding for our siblings who are non-binary, non-conforming. And we're talking about people who are asking their pronouns to be they and them. This is something that is very well...
I heard of when we say our king, that phrase, our king, where it came from in the Uganda, I've forgotten what they are called, the tribe, it's in Uganda.
Is it Buganda?
Buganda, yes. Have on Afro Queer podcast, the episode on the Buganda king. And it was a very good episode, and I was like, oh, it was well explained, and how when the British arrived there, they had a struggle with that. And
but you see, Rab, the reality is that homosexuality, before the colonizers and the missionaries
Mm-hmm.
did not have the name homosexuality.
Yes.
It was our way of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, same gender love existed,
Yes.
you know, in humanity, in the cultures, in our spirituality. Now, when we go back, we can date back some of the African spirituality, the gods and the Shangos and the Oshuns and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You will find in the Yoruba culture, there are statues, you know, there are crafted statues of men with erectile penis, where they're holding on to each other's penis. And you can only begin to imagine what is this all about. It's about the fertility god, where they masturbate each other for the pleasure of spilling the seed for the ground. Now, of course, you know, when the colonizers came and the missionaries came, they came with homophobia to most of the colonies. They came with homophobia to the global south. And unfortunately, we're still seeing the trend in the guise of conservative evangelical Christians
Yes.
who are still pushing the narrative of homophobia right down to parliament. So that look at Uganda and Ghana today. There are legislations that are being tabled, you know, to punish the LGBT community.
Yeah.
In Uganda, there is a death sentence on the legislation to kill gay people.
On top of already
On top-
an already harsh law
Harsh
that
situation.
already exists.
So you can imagine that as well. So we've begun to talk about, you know, homophobia in Africa. It came with colonialism. The laws that we are, you know, campaigning to repeal in the former British colony were laws that were brought by the British colonizers, which United Kingdom has since repealed
Yes.
in their own country. But unfortunately, Africans that, you know, have this deadlock kind of situation want to hold on to these ridiculous laws, you know, because it's profitable for their politics, you know, it's profitable. I mean, and for them, I still do not understand the Christian leaders. Let me speak to the Christian leaders right now. When Jesus said that there are two laws: love the Lord your God with all your heart. You understand me? The second one is to love your neighbors as yourself.
Yeah.
Yet we've seen Christian bishops, Christian leaders support laws that will kill another human being.
Yeah, that's what fascinates me. But we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get into how you got into priesthood. And then, because I believe you, because you went into law. So I think, I'm interested to find out how you got into law and then from law became an Anglican priest. So, yeah, because that's not the same as white garment. So that's like you went way off. It's like you went way on the other side of, So because we got to come back to what's happening in Africa today. Actually, a friend, my neighbor here, if her son wasn't sick, she probably would have come to the studio to see you because she didn't believe when I told her that I was interviewing you. She's Kenyan and she actually sent me a protest. I will show you while we're on break of what's happening on the 23rd in Kenya. All right, so we'll take a quick break and we shall be right back. Hi, everyone. If you're new to the podcast or a returning listener and you enjoy what we are doing here, did you know that you could enjoy more of our content and also support our work via Patreon? For as little as $3 per month, you get access to loads of bonus content that you'll find nowhere and be the first to the latest news. Don't miss out. Go to patreon.com/White Label American Pod or just search for White Label American Podcast on Patreon. Patreon. All right. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. So, one quick thing before we begin. Before we continue. When I arrived in Bahrain, you know, there were some of my shipmates used to be like they were having like a culture shock moment, and they were like, you know, I can't understand this Bahrainis. I think the men here, a lot of them are gay, which that's a whole different conversation about that. But You see men walking on the street and they were all holding each other's hands, and it wasn't just the Arabs. People from India, they do it a lot. The Indian subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal. You see men just walking on the streets holding hands. And I was like, that's your conclusion for you get how people become gay? Like, yeah, man, why are the men holding hands? And they're not even talking about the men doing the kiss on the cheeks. It's just men holding hands, men being just holding each other's shoulders, being comfortable around men in their own spaces. It was like a lot of people from the United States were like, "Wow, this is a surprise to see. Like, why are these men just?" And I was like, actually, I used to do that in Port Harcourt with my boys. Like, it was okay. Like, I had one of the guys who would, if you're walking too slow, he would just hold your hand. Come on, let's go cross the street. Pull you to cross the street. And I was like, oh, I do miss some of this. Well, I never thought for once that, oh, this made me gay because my boy held my hands, or we held hands and we hold each other's shoulders on the streets. And I remember talking to some of my boys. We had like a group conference call, but just checking on the boys back home. And I said, all right, I love you guys, man. No homo. I said, since when did we start saying no homo? When? When is this? Like, no, man. No, it's just like, man. So even now, somehow I got to get one or two boys. Like, if you're my boy and we're really cool, it doesn't cost me anything to say I love you. I love you if I love you, And I still have one of my boys. He still can't stop saying that. He just no homo. I'm like, dude, you sound lame. You have something, you need to go figure it out, work on it. It's not with me. But if I love you and I say I love you, man, hey, I love you, bro. Handshake. All right, bye. See you. Send you a text. I love you, man. Just think about you. Just want to say I love you. Like,
I think men should say I love you to other men more often.
No homo. I'm like, why you add no homo? What does that mean? It means not. Yeah. You work on whatever. Tell your boy you love him. Tell your brother you love him. It doesn't have to be a blood relative. I love my boys. There's nothing wrong with that. But Bahrain was
I think the fact that we come into a society that seems to romanticize relationship between men is quite threatening to the culture of patriarchy.
Yes.
And I think that, if more men will say to other men, I love you, it will help with their mental health and their anxiety. And I think that the absence of that is part of the problem. Now, men holding men, boys holding boys' hands is never a problem.
Never.
Until homophobia was introduced into many cultures. Yeah. And unfortunately now, in a place like Nigeria, yes, if you say to another man, I love you, you will get this kind of response, no homo. It's simply because the society landscape has shifted towards hatred, has shifted towards fear. These are things that never happened. The African culture was very, very accepting of same-gender behavior and same-gender spaces. You understand me? Because a man holds a man's hand doesn't mean that they are in a romantic relationship. No. We've changed it. We've created a culture of fear instead of helping people love each other. Listen, I live in Manchester, in London, in England, and there are many projects that is supporting men, because the suicide rate amongst men is way higher than the suicide rate amongst women. Not that it's competition, but men are taking their own lives in a terrible circumstances and higher percentages, which is the shock. We know when there's so much pressure on men, it causes more problem. It activates so much of their mental health crisis.
I agree. So with that being said, you attended college for law. Was there any reason why you chose law?
Well, I mean, like many African, children or children of Africans, your profession is already decided for you.
Yeah.
When you were born. So, in my family, it was no difference. Of course, my dad in particular had decided, what profession each and every of his children are going to be. My older brother was going to be an accountant. I was going to be the lawyer. My younger brother was going to be the engineer, and I think my sisters had various other professions, that were assigned to them. But I mean, the reality is that many of us tried, to become the profession that our parents wanted. I knew that I was not the academic person in my family. My older brother was, and he's actually late now. May his soul rest in peace.
Amen.
Now, he actually did his best. He became an accountant, and not just any accountant. He was a forensic accountant.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good.
My younger brother, yes, became an engineer. He did a lot of work in transportation, that field of engineering. And of course, my younger sister became a beauty therapist. And then, my other sister, she became an engineer. I became a lawyer. Now, of course, law is interesting, as you will find it. But I also, had my earlier legal career with the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK. So I worked for the prosecutor's office for 12 years, but I was not happy. Now, I mean, your parents might decide your profession, but you need to decide if you're going to be happy with this. I mean, I think that, there's nothing wrong with parents, making suggestions or guiding their children towards a career that is lucrative and is great and there are great respect. But they need to also be mindful about the strength of those children. You put a lot of pressure on those children to get the grades. Now, I would have been very happy to be a tailor, sewing clothes and making garments. And I know today there are many people I know who are tailors who had learned the craft of, fashion designers.
Yeah.
They all have high street names, stores after them, which is not a bad thing. You don't need, university education to be a graphic designer if you're good at designing. And it's just one of those things. And of course, if you want to become a chef or a cook or any other trade, as long as you are happy, that's what is important. But I think parents don't understand that. I mean, I became a lawyer because of the pressure from my family. But of course, when it was time for me to set everything aside, I started to focus on becoming a theologian, a pastor. And, like many things, it didn't happen at the end of my legal career. It actually, my journey to becoming a priest started when I was probably about 13 years old. Yeah. So, I believe that in the moment of my baptism, I believe that God called me in that time. And of course, when I found myself at age 13 reading the Bible, quite seriously and quite religiously, I came across all the Bible passages that you can imagine about homosexuality. And that really gave me a level of discomfort because I didn't understand it. And of course, a 13-year-old is not in a theological school.
Yeah.
That is why I would say today, anyone listening to this podcast, if you have a Bible, lock it away from your teenage children. They don't need to be reading the Bible. They don't need it. You understand me? The Bible is, it has to be rated, to be quite honest. The Old Testament, for example, has a lot of violence in it.
Yes.
And it teaches so much against women. It teaches about the oppression of women. It teaches about, killing people who don't agree with you, wiping out a whole community because they offended your community. That's the Old Testament. But I'm not saying the entire Old Testament. The Old Testament also have, the book of Psalms, the Songs of Solomon. It has other beautiful stories or narratives as well that are great. But the New Testament is the best part of the Bible because it comes with the story of redemption. The Old Testament are stories pre-scientific period. A lot of stories come pre-scientific. The New Testament is where we begin to talk about the grace. Jesus Christ walked among the people, came for the people. The disciples of Jesus Christ encouraged the people, to follow the way of Christ, to bring peace to the world. That's the New Testament. Do you understand me? But of course, people look at scriptures very different. But for a young person, and I'm saying this, because of my own personal experience and many others, for young people, it needs to be age appropriate. So I think that anyone over the age of 18, can be encouraged to read the Bible, not a 13-year-old. And it's not because of my sexuality, if a 13-year-old reads the Bible, they can easily become those, hardcore patriarchal people, especially when we're talking about boys. The Bible says that women should obey me, all of those things, but without having the better understanding of how this is used and in what context, is this being used. I mean, even the Bible passage that says that, women should not speak in the church. I mean, if you read it properly, it's talking to a particular woman saying, do not speak here. Go home and ask your husband. Not every woman that speaks in church has husband at home they can go back to.
Yeah.
And what makes it appropriate that a woman should go home and ask a husband? How about if the woman is the one with a better wisdom than a husband she's been sent home to ask? So, and we've seen cultures where we say that women don't speak.
True.
But they speak through the men. The men speak for them. And I think sometimes this is very wrong. But anyway, going back to how I moved from how I studied theology, I studied law and then gone to theology. I've always known that I wanted to be a minister when I was young. But at age 13, I've never been to career opportunities that navigate towards, work in the church. But I want to say to anyone working in the church, especially if you are a pastor, a priest or a minister, or even if you're in the mosque, you're an imam, in the temple, you're a rabbi, or any other religious leadership position, you are a social worker. You are not God. You are a social worker. You are there to provide pastoral support for the people. You're not there to oppress them. You're not there to marginalize them. You're not there to lord it over them. So we need to be mindful, the Pope is not God,
No.
The Archbishop is not God. They are social workers. They help guide the people, whether they are part of your religious communities or not. This is where I really like the Anglican Church or the Church of England, to be specific. In the parishes, every church in the Church of England have parishes. They have parish boundary.
Okay.
So geographically, anyone that resides in the parish boundary automatically have access to the priest for about everything or anything that they want. So, I mean, let's just say if there's a gentleman in my parish church and they want to complete a housing application form and they cannot do it, they can call on the priest to help them.
Even if they are not Anglican.
Even if they're not Anglican, even if they're not a member of the church, but the fact that they live in the parish, they have access to the priest.
Okay.
Now, if you're doing your passport identification thing, you don't go to the Anglican. You can call, because the priest is listed as one of the people that can affirm your identity. Okay. So you can go to the priest and say, I've just completed my passport application form. I need someone to verify my identity. You don't have to be a member of the church. This is part of the problem I've seen with many church denominations, where if you're not a member of the church, you do not have access to the minister in that church. So if you're not a member of the church, but you're giving birth to a baby and you want your baby christening, they will say, sorry, you're not a member of the church. If you give birth to a child and you want your child baptized, in some churches, the church will say, sorry, you're not our member. We can't baptize. But the reality is that we're all members of Christ's body. We're all members. I think I understand, I do not understand this whole membership thing that people claim on. If you live in that region, in that area, you should have access to your religious minister as a standard. And it's not because you're a member of the congregation.
So, before I get to my question, one quick thing I would say is on your point about a rating being on the Bible. I like that point. I think that's very necessary. My final year of secondary school or high school for American audience, a friend of mine presented a letter to me that he wanted me to give to a girl he had his eyes on. So it was a love letter. And after an experience the previous year, I no longer just delivered letters that were given to me. I made sure I read I went through the letter so that my rep did not get tarnished. So I went through the letter and I was like, why does this letter sound so familiar to me? And I went over the letter again. I was like, this reads like a Bible passage. So I called the boy back. I was like, where did you come up with this whole love letter, this poem yourself? He said, oh, no, I copied it from the Songs of Solomon. I'm like, but my friend, take this letter back. You copied the whole Bible passage and you're trying to present it to a girl. Like, this is me telling you that I'm interested in you. So I think that speaks to, younglings not knowing, not understanding the Bible. And
Do you know someone did an experiment some time ago. They took words from the Bible and presented it without telling what chapter and verse. They did it as a social experiment to people and said,
I think I've seen that video.
Yeah, you've seen that video. Where did this word come from? People thought they were words from Muslim community. But again, this is how people misunderstand that.
I mean, slavery was justified.
Exactly. Subjugation of women and so on. But a lot of people, because we're so accustomed, and our focus is always on the New Testament, we forget how bad the Old Testament is, in terms of, because you can copy some things in the Old Testament that is absolutely scary. And that is why I'm seriously
I read
in
the Old
favor
Testament as a kid.
of X-rating the Old Testament and making sure that it is age appropriate. I'm in favor of children's Bible because you protect, their innocence and you protect their mind.
Yeah.
But, I'm not saying that, people should not be inquisitive. But of course, that inquisitivity needs to be guided. What I did not get as a 13-year-old gay boy growing up in Nigeria, is I didn't have access to pastoral care. When I read all of the parts in Bible about homosexuality, there was nobody to explain them to me that, hold on, Jide, this is not what it meant. Because again, even today, when we talk about homosexuality, people are telling me, show me the scripture. The scripture doesn't always speak about everything. The scripture is not the final decision about everything in the life we live. When Jesus Christ was walking on planet Earth, there was no penicillin, there was no aeroplane, and there was no iPhone.
True.
So we need to be speaking today around the wisdom that we got. And I love what Jesus Christ said to his disciples at one point. He said, I'm going away. I will send the advocates, the Holy Spirit that will teach you new things. We all have, the opportunity to learn new things through the power of the Holy Spirit. So we learn so many things. We get the wisdom through the Holy Spirit. We get wisdom. And a lot of people that also, when we read the Bible, we also need to read other literatures that were written around the time the Bibles were written. So if anybody want to talk about the 21st century, in religious terms, then maybe we should also read, books that have been written. I'm talking both fiction and non-fiction that were written in the 21st century that's got nothing to do with religious texts. Sure. That's why you see that in Islam, they always have the hadith. They have the additional books, that explain some of the things that they're trying to say in the Quran. And I think it's important that we also apply, similar things to other religious texts as well. So if a part of the Bible is written in some first century, perhaps maybe reading other writings in the first century outside of the religious text might help us understand the language at the time. And I think that, sometimes when we look at words like, when people talk about Sodom and Gomorrah and, the people came to Lot's house, bring out the men so that we may know them. The key word there is know them. Which word was used? In what phrase was it used? What's the interpretation? Now, I'm sitting here with you and I say, I would like to get to know you. Does it mean I'm saying that I want to have sex with you?
No.
Thank you. It means I want to get to know you. Give me your profile, give me your biography, let me know your background, let me know your family, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, with time, that could also change its meaning, you know? Because again, people, documenting scriptures took time as well. There were centuries between the oral,
the oral,
the oral journey
written,
of scriptures to the written. So
versions.
there's so much. And that is why I always say to people that we must have a lot of patience when it comes to religious texts. We need to have a better understanding, of the intentions of the those who collected the Bible together, those who bound all those different books together, and gave us the Bible.
So, with that being said, how do you feel about the okay, let me see. There was a story that I came across from BBC Africa today, and that was I think 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, either just before the pandemic or during the pandemic, just when the pandemic began. There was a far-right group in Spain, kind of like a cyber farm, and all they did was just ship, create memes and target African accounts on Twitter and Facebook and just send homophobic messages towards them every day and just promote these hate messages. But how do you feel about your fellow ministers on the continent providing cover for such people, like backing such messages up instead of acting as places of sanctuary and places of love and places of places where people from the LGBTQ communities could be welcomed, and always acting like anytime LGBTQ is brought up, they're like, oh, these are the first people to speak against them, when we have more serious issues on the continent that require attention, and we don't hear those voices being the first to speak up. But it's like, oh, as soon as homosexuality is brought up, we are the first to, this is abomination to God. That's one of the first issues that always unites.
Honestly, to me, it's really there's a great waste of time and resources. When religious groups group together to campaign against the LGBT community. I think that we know today that both the religious communities and the political community are avoiding the real issues in their communities. I'm not saying this in jest at all. There are religious leaders that are highly corrupt.
True.
So, and there are religious leaders whose life are also very awful. But in order to cover their own track, they need a distraction. They're distracting the people. Mm-hmm. I'm not against religious leaders who have multimillionaires or who have private jets, but you have to ask yourself a question. If you're doing something and you don't want people to find out about it, you defect onto somebody else. Now, let's look at it even from Scripture's position. There were two people praying to God to forgive them their sins. And one of them turned around and said, God, my sin is not as bad as the sin of this other person. What's the purpose of that? You are detracting the fact that you have got your own issues, but you want to project it to this other person. And, before anyone says anything else, I just want to make it clear that homosexuality is not a sin. Let me say that again. Homosexuality is not a sin.
Yes.
Homosexuality is like saying, I am a black person, and does that make it wrong?
No,
you understand me? No. So I think we need to understand that. But you see, when it comes to the fact that people focus on LGBT persons and they ignore the other issues, you aid and abet the hatred, you aid and abet the violence, you look at the violence that LGBT people are suffering, and you're not addressing that. And we've seen it all over the continent of Africa. And let me speak for Nigeria in this instance, where a gay person is attacked, even though there are witnesses. This case is reported to the police. Mm-hmm. The police comes along, you point out the assailant. All the assailant needs to say is that I actually caused this injury to Jide because he is a homosexual, then I get arrested by the police and, my assailant walks free. In what world is that justified? And then we now have religious communities that is colluding with that hatred. To be quite honest, I mean, I don't want Jesus Christ to weep again because he already wept once. But if anything at all, Jesus Christ is weeping. This body of homophobic, transphobic, religious people are causing Christ to cry again over Christ loving children.
So, what words of advice and encouragement would you offer to LGBT individuals navigating their own faith journeys within?
I have so much to say to LGBT people navigating. I say just love yourself because God loves you. You have nothing to apologize about. I said this so many times that no one has the monopoly to the presence of God. We are uniquely created by God to have that access to God. You see, religious leaders are not God, so they have nothing to say about you. You are here to fulfill your own life and enjoy your life. God has given you, God has blessed you to be who you are. Have pleasure in it. Enjoy yourself. Jesus Christ said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. If we fall short of those two things, there is absolutely nothing to gain. Now, I also say to queer people, I say this all the time, and a lot of people don't like the word queer, but I like the word queer. I like the word LGBT. The acronym works for me. So for everyone that is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and our families and friends and our allies, I want to say to you that GAY means God adores you. God accepts you. If you like myself and you want to be a priest, let me reassure you right now, God anoints you. I mean, scripture tells us, especially there are two scriptures, Jeremiah 1:4 to 5 says that, God knew us, before we were formed in our mother's womb, right? God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb and consecrated us prophet over nations. A lot of people still don't know that. I'm not just claiming this for the queer community. I'm claiming this for everybody. And also for LGBT persons that have a heart for God, come just as you are. Because Psalm 139, I believe between verse 13 and 15 says, for we are fearfully and wonderfully made. When people turn around and say God made Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, Steve didn't fall out of the sky. God made Adam and Steve and also made Madam and Evelyn. So everybody is loved by God. You understand me? And I think, it would take a much more longer time, for us to even go into the scriptures of creation and begin to understand the creation of God. People sometimes always believe God made one man and one woman. Not so. God made them many men and many women. And of course, we know that the example that is primarily given to us about heteronormativity is great, but it doesn't discount or dismiss the fact there are same gender loving relationships. After all, if we're to believe the Bible that God made one man, one woman, Cain and Adam and Eve gave birth to twins, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel, and then he was able to find a wife for himself. Where did she come from if God did not create other people?
True.
So I think that, we have to slow down and begin to unpack. That is why I said earlier on that for me as an individual, I got to a place where I have to unlearn, what I've been taught that were hateful and harmful about the scripture and begin to learn the new things. And this is where I believe that Jesus Christ was speaking to his disciples and also speaking to many of us that I will send the Holy Spirit that will teach you new things. The things that I've learned today are new things, and they are inclusive and affirming of same-gender loving individuals who love the Lord with all of their heart and want to worship. We talk about dancing.
Yes.
I mean, if you, honestly speaking, this is no competition. Maybe you want to drive this competition. Put all the LGBT people on the dance floor and put straight people on the dance floor and see who's going to be the best dancer.
Nah, it's not. That's not fair now. That's not fair. I'm not even going. I'm not going to stand on that dance floor. I'll be the judge. I volunteer to be a judge instead.
But having said that, talking about dancing also, the LGBT people are God's people that are blessed with so much creativity.
Yes.
And I say that because when we look at the songs and the hymns that were composed, over the past thousands of years, or hundreds of years, they were mostly composed by LGBT persons. And we cannot deny that. Mm-hmm. And, if we take all the songs that were composed by LGBT people out of the church, there'll be no more songs left. There you go. I love your reaction on that.
I know. I have seen some things, so but I don't have enough time to go there. So, you know what? I would just segue into a fun topic from there. So, staying with dancing, we already know that you're a dancer. So, from there, we'll go into music. We need you to give us, everybody who comes on this podcast is considered a dancer. If you say you don't dance, we'll stop recording and kick you out of the studio right now. But we know, since we already know that you're a dancer, we can't do that. You can't even deny it anymore. So we need you to give us at least 3 artists that will keep you dancing for at least an hour. So minimum of 3 or 4 artists that can keep you dancing for an hour. And you don't have to give us the most popular names. We like to do discovery. So if you want to give us somebody that's local to Manchester or to Judu, it's up to you. But we like to discover and add to our playlist.
Absolutely. Fela Anikula Kukuti.
That's a popular name. That's that. Many people have tried to give us Fela.
Yeah, I know. I just quite on the spot. I mean, I'm glad I didn't have time to think about this as well.
We're trying to catch with
yeah, I think, goodness me, oh my God, this guy, you consider him popular. I think he's called, is it Uche, the one that sang Running to Me? And, well, of course, there's also Simi Sola.
Okay, nobody has given Simi.
Okay, Simi Sola has some really good songs that gets you dancing. Some quite romantic songs as well. I think there's a song that she was talking about, Call My Number or something like that, which I love so much.
Okay.
Who else can I... Well, I mean, I said Fela. You didn't want Fela. Fela is too popular.
A lot of people have dropped Fela, so we have to add his name to the most popular.
Add his name.
It's like giving us Beyonce or Michael Jackson. We're like, come on. You can't do that.
We can't do that. Okay, whilst I think about the other two, we can talk about something else in the meantime.
Okay. Well, the next question will be on cuisine.
Okay.
You've been to a few places around the world, and when it comes to your go-to cuisine, has it changed from your number one cuisine from back home, or are you still as loyal as they come?
Actually, I think I'm still loyal, but it has also changed. I do like Italian food.
Oh, Italian is that good.
Yeah, food. I mean, obviously, I think it's somewhere between Italian and Spanish food. I mean, with Italian, it would be a lot of pasta with a lot of meatballs. But again, Spanish food would be paella, and it also depends on who's making it, because paella always remind me of fried rice or jollof rice, because it's one of those things depending on who's making it as well. That's true. But nothing beats amala and gbegiri with ewedu. So let's stay focused on my Yoruba dish.
My wife appreciates amala. She's German, but
there you go.
She loves pounded yam too, but she makes pounded yam, but. She knows that once she make that one, she's not getting up anymore. Once she eats pounded yam, she's like, young. She's like,
I just remember an artist. Is it called Dakolo?
Dakolo.
The guy who sang
Oh.
Ìyàwó mi,
I know that
olólùfẹ́
name.
mi,
I know that name.
ọ̀rẹ́
Dakolo.
mi àtàtà.
I haven't heard him in a while, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, there you go. So I think that's my second one.
Okay. We're getting there. All right. So
I think I will close with God, what's Mercy's second name? Mercy is a gospel musician.
oh, the woman who passed away?
No, she's still alive.
Okay, no. I was thinking of somebody else.
I could honestly, her song always come over my.
Wait, she's Nigerian, right?
Yeah, she's Nigerian.
Okay, I will.
So all the artists I give you are Nigerians, and I don't even. There you go.
Nigerian gospel artist. Let me Google that quickly. Nigerian gospel artist, Mercy. Artist named wrong spelling. Mercy.
I'm trying to remember Mercy's second name.
Oh, what's wrong thing there? Mercy Chinwo?
That's the one.
Okay, yeah, that's the first name that came up on Google.
Yeah.
All right.
Mercy Chinwo and Timmy, I think it's Tim Dakolo.
Yes, I think
Dakolo.
So. Yeah, I think my elder brother is friends with him or something like
and
that.
I think the other one is called, I think it's Uche that sang Running to Me. It was a duet with Simi Sola.
Okay.
Or you can just go with Simi.
Uche. All right, see, you made it.
But you see, honestly, this is also me about being very proud Nigerian. I do love Nigerian music, and I think Nigerians are one of the greatest artists when it comes to music. The music beats are just incredible. Even some of the musicians that have become very unpopular lately, I'm not going to mention names, but I think sometimes I love the boldness of Nigerians to break grounds. So.
I have certain views on Nigerian music, but I don't have enough time to go there now because I have to start wrapping up. But I can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming here to share this great insight. And yes, this has been beautiful. So we have to do a part 2 down the line. Maybe I get you and Uche and but it's both Uches actually. Uche in Atlanta. He's now moved to Atlanta, and Uche in Texas. So maybe I don't know. I don't know if you know Moji Sola. She's also in Texas. Texas seems has Nigeria's headquarters anyway. So. But we have to wrap up with final question. What would you like to leave the audience with? I know you've dropped a lot of gems. So. This will be this your freestyle moment.
Indeed.
Here you go.
I mean, I would like to leave, the listeners with an understanding that there is nothing strange about being lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. These are new terms, they're new phrases that comes to describe the communities. And of course, I think that we've also come to a time where same-gender loving individuals are defining their own pathway in life because, queer people marry the opposite sex to persevere their family, to be able to continue a pattern of inheritance. But I think that the moment we got into a time where we have freedom, we are demanding that freedom to be who we are and love who we love. And I think that's really key. I mean, the one thing I will also say is that by virtue of my own journey of reconciling my faith and sexuality, if there's anyone out there who is lesbian or gay, bisexual, transgender, non-conforming, non-binary, and you have always thought of becoming a religious leader, you can do so. You can do so. You need to find the inclusive and affirming community. You need to find the academic pathway for you, and it is available. If you can't find it, get in touch with me. That's what I'll say. And finally, I also want to speak to parents of LGBT people. Parents of LGBT people, our relatives, our uncles and aunties. It is time that you stop listening to religious leaders telling you that your LGBT children and family member are demon possessed. We're not demonic possessed. We love God. We love our family. we love you, but we need you to create a safe environment and a soft landing so that we can be ourselves and fulfill our full potential. And that to me is very, very important. And of course, finally, to religious leaders who are homophobic, I believe that your time is up. You have been hiding behind the scriptures, but we also know that the scripture tells us about how fabulous we are, how wonderful we are, and how much God loves us. So it is time that we team up together and be the inclusive church and be the place that all people are welcome and not just those that you seek to oppress.
Thank you. Mbana, Eshegon, Dankeschön, and I forgot the one. Siyabonga, Asante Sana. Uche taught me a new one. I can't remember. There's one that taught me from Abriba, I can't recall. But there's some I learned from Gambia. I've gotten so many from over 153 episodes from around the world. So, you keep getting thank yous from everywhere. But please let people know where they can find you and how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm the founder of House of Rainbow. So if you search for House of Rainbow on social media, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Clubhouse. And my name is Jide Macaulay. That's Jide Macaulay. And you can find me also on social media on most platforms. I mean, I do encourage people to send a direct message if you can, to start the conversation. And we hope to be able to support you wherever you are.
All right. You have all that in the show notes. Be on the lookout, and I will have all that for you, and you can get in touch. Jide is a great guy. Trust me, he'll respond. All right. Thank you, listeners. Appreciate you all. Keep in touch. Leave comments if you have any comments, and keep the love coming in. Share with your friends, loved ones. Even if you have a secret family, share with them. Buy our merch too. Keep the love, and thank you for the privilege of your company. See you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to White Label American. If you enjoyed the show, please give a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on all social media platforms. Visit the White Label American website for links for donations, episodes, feedback, guests, merch, and newsletter. Don't forget to download the free White Label American app on the Google Play Store and Apple coming soon. Thank you for the privilege of your company.